We're Old Hus at Sandsund, which is an old shop, 1700s, and it's been restored into kind of a place where I do knitting and lessons. My name is Alison Rendell and I'm predominantly a Fair Isle maker. The Shetland way has always been to mak traditionally without a pattern. So in recent years, there's been a lot of push towards pattern writing, and I have come to enjoy that myself. I do actually enjoy recording my work. Pattern writing is very good because it enables other folk to start with Fair Isle knitting, and it enables other folk to replicate your work. But I was a bit bothered in all this pattern writing that we might lost the traditional Shetland way, which was to knit one-off bespoke pieces and just mak it up as you go and then move on to the next piece. And there was no concept of a pattern and there was no concept that we were designers. It was just what we did. So that's when I started getting into teaching making without a pattern, the Shetland way, in order to preserve that way of knitting. There's a lot of thought that goes into pattern and colour before you start, and a pretty bit of maths, of course, to work out your loops. I like to start with a hat. Lots of folks swatch, and that's very good too. So, for example, we have a hat here that I started with, and I thought it was a bit lost in the middle and I could improve it. So then I made a sleeveless, but I think I made a few more changes before I went on to make this one, which is now named the Stoven Swallow Gansey, which is kind of like a traditional 1970s style V-neck with vertical patterns. And then here is one that I did for the Conisbrough show this year. There's the hat, and this is how we ended up with the finished Gansey that won second prize in the show. Somebody's gone with my hat for this one, but did a hat first and then I went on to a short-sleeved attempt, and then this is my finished Gansey for this one. And this one actually features in my new book that's coming out. So one of the main things, of course, when you're knitting from scratch and designing your own is to look at pattern. And of course, we're spoilt for choice in Shetland. There's so many Shetland heritage motifs to choose from. So you can arrange them in the horizontal, like this. This is sort of the traditional way, when you have horizontal bands, bigger ones and pretty ones alternated, and they're all sitting on top of each other. Or, as we've already mentioned, you can arrange them in the vertical. That gives you a pretty bit more scope with sizing, because you can do what we call a seed pattern at the sides and increase your width very easily by increasing your seed pattern. And then we have all over patterns. When your pattern joins and meets up and down the way and across the way, and you get the entire garment decorated. And that, I believe, is the art to Fair Isle knitting. Complete decoration, all your patterns meeting in the round, and in fact meeting at the shoulder join as well very often, if you can get that to work. A later influence was all the Norwegian big star motifs, and we used them a lot for yokes. They're also reserved for the back of the gloves, and a lot of Shetland knitting in the gloves, you're going to have a large star on the back of the hand. You can actually also use an all-over pattern in an article as pretty as a hat, as I've done here. This is the Wastrue hat, an all-over pattern used in a hat to good effect. In Shetland, mist hems have a pattern book that's been passed down through generations very often, and that's just dot to dot on graph paper, and that's how we have passed on the Shetland motifs from generation to generation. I have my mother's book and one or two other folks' books, photocopied actually, and you can see the patterns that have been passed on. It's also a record of things half done. Of course, we're lucky to have these books in Shetland hems, but if you don't have that, then it's very doable now to buy all these Shetland motif books. There's lots of them around where you can browse patterns and start thinking about what kind of patterns you'd like to use in your garment. Colour is quite hard to teach. I feel it's for me it's a bit more instinctive. I don't actually have too many colour theories, but I can certainly share what I believe to be good ways of doing it. So I think it's really important to have a good contrast between your background and your foreground colours. Keep all your darks dark and all your lights light, and no get them muddled up. The other thing that we like to do in Shetland knitting is carefully blend the colours. I like to go either from dark to light to the centre, so my pattern colours start quite dark and they blend all the way in. But this time we've gone for kind of the lighter colours into the dark middle. You can do it either way. That's a good starting point. So I'd say it is really important to have that contrast right, and you really should be changing your colours every few rows, as I say, in order to add to the kind of richness of the design. And I also am a big fan of the pop of colour. Now I know everybody likes this, there's lots of different ways to do Fair Isle, but personally I think that my pretty bright pops just lift the design. The other thing to do is if you're new to Fair Isle knitting especially, a really good way to start is just to work with twa colours. And it's very effective. It gets you started on pattern and design and getting something to completion, and then your next attempt might be adding in a few more colours. This one's got quite a random mix of colours, and that seems to work because it's a natural black background, but also I think because it's not bands of primary colour, they're all sort of pastel-y, and that seems to work as well, just for a bit of a change. But one of the tips I can give you is that if you're knitting up your motif, you can add a pretty mirror. So if you get to the halfway point and you set your mirror on, you can then see in the mirror how it's going to look. It saves you knitting the entire motif and finding out that you're wrong. So I was just going to open up my bag and see what's in them today. This goes everywhere with me. I never travel without it because I always manage a couple of rows wherever I go. So the first thing is my trusty Mackin belt. Can't go far without this one. This is worn on the right hand side and we shove the right hand needle in it, and that helps with tension, and it also reduces a lot of strain on the wrists, and it's just really how we learn to mack. I kind of knit without one. And then I have a pretty bit of macking on the wires. I've not made much on this. This is just a pretty headband that I'm doing right now, and I've literally just got a handful of pinks in here. I'm not really sure exactly how I'm going to place them. They might end up going into red, and I nearly always have a lemony kind of colour as well. Nearly all my designs feature a tiny pretty bit of yellow in them. But there you have a whole range of lovely Shetland colours, and that shows you just how easy it is to shove a few in your bag and see how it goes, kind of thing. I always carry the pretty mirror, a pair of scissors, few odds and ends that I can't bear to waste, of course, like a typical Shetlander. And another pretty tip that I do is I always put my ball bands in the middle of my ball when I'm knitting, so that when I finish the design, I can see which shade it is that I've used. So I will just work on that headband, and I'll probably not choose all of these colours, but I'll choose some of them as I go along. So this is obviously knitting without a pattern. I don't have a pattern for this, so I just can knit a few rows here and there as I go and not have to think too much because I can memorise it. Well, I think that you need to develop your own tension, and everybody's tension is different. So you want your loops to be largely uniform. So if you think about designing your own from scratch, you want to ken how much your tension is going to be so that you can size the garment, if you see what I mean. So that means number of loops per 10 centimetres. For me, it's about 34. For other folk, it might be more or less. But that helps you then to decide on the size, and helps you choose what motifs and that you're going to use in the round. So tension is important to work with your own tension basically before you start. It's even more critical when you're replicating somebody else's design. Their tension might be different to yours and you need to match theirs to create what they've made. I generally knit with 3mm wires, and that's the perfect stitch gauge, if you like, for Fair Isle knitting. You don't want big gappy loops. You want it to be quite uniform and quite neat. So I have a couple of jumpers here that belong to my daughter Nina. So Nina is a very keen Fair Isle knitter, and more importantly, she was really keen to learn the Shetland way to do it. She wanted to grasp that concept of being able to just knit from scratch. So I have this example in Nina's first Gansey here. She started off here and started knitting, and I said to her, your tension's a bit tight, and it was really sticky on the wires. And she loosened up, and as you can see, here we have really pretty stars that are very tightly made, and then by the time we've gotten to here, they're much, much bigger. Then she'd realised that she'd made it a bit on the slack side, so she's just learning here. By the time she got to the sleeves, she'd found the middle ground, and her knitting is perfect. From this point on, she's always made it the same tension. She's learned and discovered how it should be for her. And so she now knows for her 10-inch square what her tension's going to be. It doesn't really matter. The pretty stars, the big stars, it all looks good, and it's still a wearable garment. So it's not a disaster. It's still a worthwhile Gansey at the end of the day. So then she went on to make her second one. And as you can see, her tension issues are all evened out. And she's got the same tension the whole way through, and she's kind of an established knitter in her own right. So the final stage would be the boarding, or the dressing as we call it in Shetland. It's also known as blocking. And what that means is that you just wash the piece carefully, and then you can be slightly rougher as you try to stretch it and get it to the size that you want. So it's not about overstretching it, but it's definitely about shaping. So as you can see on my wall here, we have scarf boards for lace or Farrell scarves, jumper board in a big size and a pretty size. This up at the top is my great-great-grandmother's hat board for great big shawls. And then I have a number of glove boards and sock boards and things lying over there. And I love every one of them because they're all so different. And that is how we dress the final piece. Shetlanders always board everything in order to get that smooth fabric. It kind of gets rid of the stitch definition so that you have a finished fabric, really. Well, Farrell knitting is all over the world now. It's very popular, and that's really good to see. But it is really important to keep Shetland at the heart of that, because it was created here, the inspiration is here, and the whole how it was made started here in this traditional way that I'm speaking about. And so there's no substitute for that. It's actually being immersing yourself in the Shetland culture. My final message would be to give it a go and not be too precious about it. Reading for a pattern is fine, but it can be a little stressful when you lost your place or you don't understand the instructions. And it's much more relaxing once you've done a pretty bit of preparation, is just to set off and knit and just try it. As I say, there's many things that I've made that have not been complete success, but it's wearable. Somebody might like it even if you don't like it. And for that piece, the bits you've learned, you take that forward in the next piece. So I would definitely encourage folk to give it a go.